The afternoon sunlight rested softly across the living room rug, warming the quiet space the way it did every day. She sat curled into the corner of the couch, a cup of tea cooling in her hands, half listening to the gentle ticking of the wall clock. The house smelled faintly of old paper and lavender, comforting, familiar, safe. On the floor near the bookshelf, the new puppy lay stretched out beside an old storybook she'd pulled down earlier while cleaning. It was worn, its spine slightly cracked, pages yellowed with time. She hadn't even opened it yet. It had just ended up there. First, the puppy only watched it. Then he stood. Then he placed one paw firmly on the cover. A low, uncertain whine escaped his throat. She smiled faintly. "What is it, buddy?" she whispered, setting her tea down. But when she tried to slide the book away, the puppy suddenly barked, sharp, urgent, nothing like his playful yips from earlier. His small body trembled as he pressed harder onto the book, blocking it completely. Her smile faded. Hey, it's okay," she murmured, but her chest tightened as the puppy refused to move. His ears flattened. His eyes stayed locked on the book like it was alive. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too still. Her fingers hovered inches from the cover. The puppy let out another strained whine. Moments later, everything changed. Before we continue, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching dog stories. And tell me, where are you watching from? The house always felt warm in the afternoons. Not hot, not stuffy, just gently warm. Sunlight slipped through the thin living room curtains, laying soft golden rectangles across the wooden floor. Dust floated lazily in the light, moving slowly, like tiny drifting clouds. She sat curled into the corner of the couch, one sock half slipping off her heel, a ceramic mug warming her palms. Chamomile tea. Slightly sweet, slightly earthy. The faint steam brushed her face each time she lifted it. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. Steady, predictable, comforting. This was her favorite time of day. No emails. No noise from the street. No expectations. Just quiet. Across the room, the puppy shifted in his sleep. A tiny exhale puffed through his nose. His paws twitched once, maybe chasing something in a dream. Maybe running through some wide, open field only dogs could see. She smiled without looking at him. "You're having a big adventure, huh?" she murmured softly. Her voice blended into the stillness like it belonged there. The puppy had only been with her for 3 weeks. 3 short weeks. And already the house felt different. Lighter. Fuller. Less echoing. She set the mug on the side table and stretched her legs out, letting her toes press into the rug. The woven fibers scratched lightly against her skin, grounding, real, familiar. Her eyes drifted toward the bookshelf across the room. Earlier that morning, while dusting, she'd found the old storybook wedged behind a stack of photo albums. She didn't even remember putting it there. The cover was faded blue cloth, corners softened from years of hands turning it over and over. She'd placed it on the floor absent-mindedly while cleaning, and forgotten about it. It lay there now, still, quiet, unimportant. Or it should have been. The puppy stirred again. This time he didn't settle. His head lifted slowly, ears tilted forward. His dark eyes locked onto the storybook. She noticed the shift immediately. Animals changed the air when they focused on something. "What is it?" she asked quietly. The puppy pushed himself upright, wobbling slightly the way young dogs sometimes did when they were still growing into their legs. He didn't look at her. He walked toward the book. Slow steps. Careful steps. Like approaching something alive. She sat up straighter. A tiny thread of curiosity tightened in her chest. The puppy reached the book and lowered his nose toward it. Sniffed once. Paused. Then again, longer this time. His tail didn't wag. Not playful. Not excited. Just still. Then slowly he placed one small paw on the cover. She blinked. "Hey," she said gently, half amused. "That's not a toy." The puppy didn't move. A low sound slipped out of him. Not quite a growl. Not quite a whine. Something uncertain. Something searching. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Buddy." The puppy shifted his weight, pressing more firmly onto the book. His ears flattened slightly, and then came the first real whine. Soft, strained, like he didn't understand what he was feeling. Her chest tightened. The room suddenly felt smaller. Not scary, just heavier. Like the air had thickened around them. She stood slowly. Didn't want to startle him. "It's okay," she said, voice softer now. "It's just a book." She stepped closer. The floor creaked beneath her heel. The puppy's head snapped up. His eyes found hers, wide, bright, alert. Then he barked. Sharp. Sudden. It sliced through the quiet room. She froze. The puppy never barked like that. Not since she brought him home. Her heart gave one hard thump against her ribs. "Hey," she whispered quickly. "Hey, it's okay." She crouched slowly, lowering herself to his level. The smell of old paper reached her now, dry, dusty, faintly sweet with age. Her hand moved toward the book. The puppy stepped forward instantly, blocking it. Small body. Huge determination. Another whine escaped him, louder now, trembling. She stopped moving. Her fingers hovered inches from the cover. "Do you not want me to touch it?" she whispered. The puppy's breathing quickened. His chest moved fast beneath his soft fur. He shifted his paw slightly, like adjusting grip. Guarding. Protecting. She swallowed. A strange memory flickered at the edge of her mind. Not clear enough to grab. Just a feeling. Like hearing music through a wall. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. I won't." The puppy didn't relax. Not fully. But the sharp edge in his posture softened a little. She sat cross-legged on the floor beside him. Close enough to feel his warmth. Not touching. Just there. Minutes passed. The clock ticked. A car drove past outside, tires humming on pavement. The puppy never took his eyes off the book. Finally she whispered, "What do you know that I don't?" The puppy's ears twitched. His nose lowered again, pressed lightly against the cover. And for a moment, just a moment, his whole body trembled. Not fear. Not excitement. Something deeper. Something instinctive. Something ancient. She wrapped her arms around her knees, watching him. Waiting. Listening to the quiet house. Listening to her own breathing. Listening to the tiny sounds the puppy made as he guarded something she didn't yet understand. The sunlight shifted slowly across the floor. Time passed. But neither of them moved away from the book. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet certainty began forming. This wasn't random. This wasn't curiosity. This was something else. Something she wasn't ready to name yet. The puppy let out one more soft whine and pressed his paw more firmly onto the storybook. She stared at it, at him, at the space between them. And for the first time that afternoon, she felt the quiet start to change. Moments later, everything changed. The next morning felt almost normal. Almost. Soft gray light pressed gently through the kitchen window. The sky outside looked washed clean, like it had rained overnight. The air smelled fresh. Damp earth. Wet leaves. The quiet hum of early morning traffic drifted faintly from down the street. She stood at the counter, spreading peanut butter onto toast. Behind her, tiny nails clicked lightly across the tile. The puppy. He moved slower than usual. Not sleepy. Not playful. Just alert. She glanced down as he stopped beside her feet. His ears were angled forward. His body slightly tense. She followed his gaze. Straight toward the living room. Straight toward the storybook. Still on the floor where they'd left it. Still untouched. Still waiting. She swallowed. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "You're just being weird about it. That's all." She set the knife down and wiped her hands on a towel. The puppy didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't wag. He just watched. She grabbed her toast and walked into the living room slowly, like approaching something fragile. The book sat exactly where it had yesterday. Sunlight hadn't reached it yet. It looked colder in the morning light. Less harmless. She shook her head. "You're letting a puppy scare you," she said quietly. She sat on the couch, took a bite of toast, chewed slowly. The puppy padded forward, positioned himself between her and the book. Saturday. Not touching it this time, just guarding the space. Her stomach tightened. Buddy, she said gently. It's paper. That's it. He didn't look at her. His nose twitched once. Then again. Like he was tracking a scent only he could detect. She leaned forward slightly. The peanut butter stuck to the roof of her mouth. Dry. Thick. Suddenly unpleasant. Okay, she said, quieter now. Okay, we're going to test something. She set her plate down. Stood. Walked slowly toward the book. The puppy stood instantly. His tail lowered. Not tucked. Just serious. She took another step. He moved with her. Sideways. Blocking. She stopped. The room felt very still. Outside a bird chirped. A distant car door slammed. Inside, nothing but her breathing and his. Hey, she said softly. Look at me. The puppy didn't. He took one small step forward. Placed himself fully between her and the book. Then came the sound again. That strained, confused whine. It pulled at something inside her chest. Okay, she whispered quickly. Okay, I hear you. She stepped back. The puppy's body loosened slightly. Not relaxed, but less urgent. She sat on the floor across from him, cross-legged, mirroring yesterday. You're trying to tell me something, she said quietly. The puppy finally looked at her. His eyes were glossy, not sick, not scared, just intense, like he was holding a thought he couldn't explain. She reached slowly toward him. Not the book, just him. He leaned into her fingers instantly. Warm, soft, trusting. She scratched gently behind his ear. His eyes fluttered closed for a second, then snapped back open. Back to the book. Always back to the book. Her throat tightened. How long have you been doing this? She whispered. The question surprised even her. Like she'd asked it without thinking. Like part of her already believed. This wasn't new for him. She shifted slightly closer to the book. Not touching. Just closer. The puppy's head lifted. His breathing changed. Faster. Shallower. Okay. There was definitely something. She exhaled slowly. All right, she said softly. We do this your way. She leaned back. Put space between herself and the book. The puppy slowly lowered himself to the floor again. One paw stretched forward, resting lightly against the cover. Guarding. Not attacking. Not afraid. Just watching. Minutes passed. Then an hour. She worked on her laptop from the couch. The puppy never left his spot. He shifted occasionally. Adjusted. But never moved away. Around noon her phone buzzed. She jumped slightly. The puppy flinched too. Then immediately checked the book. Always the book. She answered the call quietly. Yes, hi, yeah, I can send that later today. Her voice sounded normal. But her eyes kept drifting down. Watching him. Watching the way his ears twitched every time the house made a sound. Watching the way he occasionally pressed his nose to the book like checking it was still there. Still safe. Still contained. When the call ended, she set her phone down slowly. Okay, she whispered. She stood again. Moved slowly. Carefully. Testing. She walked past the book this time. Not toward it. Past it. Toward the hallway. The puppy tracked her movement. But didn't react. Interesting. She paused halfway down the hall. Turned. Took one step toward the book again. The puppy stood immediately. A soft, urgent bark escaped him. Not loud. But firm. Clear. No. She froze. Heart pounding. Okay, she said quickly. Okay. She stepped back again. The puppy relaxed slightly. Returned to guarding position. Her pulse hammered in her ears. This wasn't random. This wasn't training. This wasn't play. This was purpose. She walked slowly back into the living room. Sat on the couch. Stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then whispered to the empty air. What's in that book? The puppy shifted. Pressed closer to it. The afternoon light began slowly sliding across the floor again. Golden. Warm. Familiar. But today it didn't feel quite the same. Something unseen sat in the room with them. Something patient. Something waiting. The puppy let out one final soft whine. Lowered his head onto his paws. Still touching the book. Still guarding. She watched him. Watched the steady rise and fall of his breathing. And felt a quiet understanding settle deeper into her chest. This wasn't fear. This wasn't danger. This was warning. Gentle. Insistent. Unignorable. She wrapped her arms around herself. And whispered, "Okay. I'm listening." The quiet house listened back. The third day began with sunlight. Bright. Clear. Almost too cheerful for how heavy the house felt. She stood at the sink, rinsing her coffee mug, watching the reflection of the living room window shimmer across the water. The faucet hummed steadily. The sound grounded her. Behind her, silence. Not the peaceful kind. The waiting kind. She turned off the water, dried her hands slowly, then stood there a moment longer listening. No toy squeaks. No playful paws. No tiny happy snorts. Just quiet. She turned. The puppy sat exactly where she expected, beside the storybook, one paw resting gently across the faded blue cover. His ears perked the moment she faced him. His tail thumped once. Soft. Relieved. Like he was glad she was finally paying attention. She walked slowly into the living room. Morning light poured across the floor now, catching in the tiny threads of the rug, lighting the dust motes like floating sparks. The book looked different today. Not threatening. Not mysterious. Just old. Forgotten. Waiting to be remembered. She sat on the floor a few feet away from him. He didn't move. But his eyes never left her. "Okay," she said quietly. The word felt bigger than it sounded. Her hands rested on her knees. Her fingers pressed into the denim of her jeans, grounding herself. I think you want me to see it." The puppy blinked slowly, then lowered his nose to the book again. Pressed there, like confirmation. Her chest tightened. A memory tugged faintly at the edges of her thoughts again. Still blurry. Still unreachable. But closer now. She scooted forward an inch. The puppy stiffened. Not aggressive. Not panicked. Just alert. She stopped. Waited. Counted 3 slow breaths. Then whispered, "I'm going to try, okay?" The puppy's chest rose fast. Fell fast. But he didn't bark. Didn't block her. Didn't move. Her hand moved slowly toward the cover. Every inch felt loud. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Her fingertips brushed the fabric. Soft. Worn. Cool. The puppy whimpered quietly. Not stop. Not danger. Just emotion. She rested her palm fully on the cover. The puppy trembled. His head pressed against her wrist. Not pushing. Just touching. Like he needed to be part of this moment. "Okay," she whispered again. And slowly, she slid the book toward herself. The puppy followed the movement, staying pressed against her arm. Guarding still. But allowing. She pulled the book into her lap. Felt heavier than it should have. Like it held more than paper. Her fingers hovered over the cover. The title was faded. Barely readable. She swallowed. And opened it. The smell hit first. Old paper. Dust. A faint hint of something floral, maybe from years ago. The first page crackled softly as it opened. Blank. Just yellowed with time. She turned the page. Another. Then another. Simple children's illustrations. Soft watercolor forests. Tiny animals. Gentle bedtime story scenes. Her chest loosened slightly. "See," she whispered softly. "It's just a..." Something slid loose from between 2 pages. Fell into her lap. The puppy froze. Completely still. She looked down. It was an envelope. Thin. Cream-colored. Edges slightly curled. Her hands immediately felt cold. The front had handwriting. Faded. But familiar. Too familiar. Her breath caught halfway in. "No," she whispered. Her fingers shook as she traced the letters. Her name. Her full name. written in handwriting she hadn't seen in years. Her vision blurred instantly. Tears, sudden and hot, spilled before she even realized she was crying. The puppy pressed closer, his body fully against her thigh now. Warm, steady, grounding. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter, and something small slipped out, landed softly on the rug. She stared at it. A pressed flower. Fragile. Pale purple. Memories rushed in suddenly. Not blurry anymore. Sharp. Clear. Summer sunlight. A porch swing. Laughter. A voice reading stories out loud. Her chest collapsed inward. "Oh," she breathed. The puppy made a tiny sound, almost like relief. She unfolded the letter. The paper was thin, worn at the creases. She read slowly, each word hitting like a soft echo from the past. Not long, just personal, simple. A message meant to be found someday. Her shoulders shook as she read. Halfway through she stopped. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't see through the tears. The puppy climbed fully into her lap. Not clumsy. Not playful. Deliberate. He pressed his chest against the letter, like protecting it, like holding it steady. She wrapped one arm around him automatically, buried her face into his warm neck fur. Inhaled. Clean puppy smell. Comfort. Present. Now. She cried quietly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just release. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Eventually she pulled back. Wiped her face. Looked at the letter again. Then at the book. Then at the puppy. "You knew," she whispered. The puppy blinked slowly. Rested his chin on her arm. Calm now. Peaceful. Like a job was finally starting to finish. She pressed the letter to her chest. Her heart pounded beneath it. Not fear. Not shock. Recognition. Connection. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt full. Full of memory. Full of presence. Full of something she couldn't explain. She closed the book gently. Held it carefully. Respectfully. The puppy finally lifted his paw off the cover. For the first time in 3 days. And lay down beside her instead. Relaxed. Watching. Trusting. She looked down at him. Ran her fingers slowly along his back. "Thank you," she whispered. The puppy's tail tapped the rug once. Soft. Content. Outside, wind moved gently through the trees. Inside, she sat on the floor. Holding the past. Holding the present. And slowly understanding. Some things wait patiently to be found. And sometimes, they send help to make sure they are. That night, the house felt softer. Not lighter. Not heavier. Just gentler. Like something sharp inside it had been wrapped in warm cloth. Rain tapped lightly against the windows. Not a storm. Just steady. Patient. The kind of rain that made the world feel smaller and safer at the same time. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor again. The storybook rested in front of her. Closed. Waiting. The puppy lay beside her hip. His body curved slightly toward her leg. One ear twitched each time rain touched the glass. Calm. Present. Watching but not guarding anymore. She ran her fingers slowly across the book's fabric cover. The envelope and letter sat on the coffee table nearby. She hadn't put them away. Not yet. Didn't want to. Didn't feel ready to. The smell of rain drifted faintly through the cracked kitchen window. Wet pavement. Cool air. Distant soil. She inhaled slowly. Then exhaled. I need to finish it," she whispered. The puppy lifted his head. Looked at her. Then at the book. Then back to her. His tail gave one slow, careful sweep across the rug. Permission. Or maybe encouragement. She rested both hands on the cover. Warm now. Or maybe her hands were just warmer. She opened it again. The pages turned easier this time. Like they remembered her touch. Illustrations passed slowly beneath her fingers. Foxes, rabbits, little storybook houses under starry skies. Comforting images. Gentle. Safe. Until she reached the page where the envelope had been hidden. She paused there. Her throat tightened. The puppy shifted closer. his side pressing lightly into her leg. Grounding. Steady. I'm okay, she whispered. Maybe to him, maybe to herself. She turned the page. And the next. And the next. Near the middle of the book, something caught her eye. A page corner, folded slightly differently than the others. Not random. Intentional. Her heart picked up. Slow. Heavy. Aware. She slid her finger under the folded edge. Opened it carefully. There was writing. Not printed. Handwritten. Faint blue ink. Almost faded away completely. She leaned closer. The rain outside seemed to grow quieter. Like the world was stepping back to let her hear. The message wasn't long. Just a few lines. Tucked into the margin beside a small watercolor illustration of a child reading under a tree. Her breath shook as she read. Not instructions. Not warnings. Not anything frightening. Just love. Simple words. Written for someone who might find them one day. Her. Her eyes burned again. But the tears this time felt different. Warmer. Softer. Like missing someone but also feeling them close at the same time. The puppy made a tiny sound. Not worried. Not alert. Just aware. He rested his chin gently on the open page. Careful not to smudge it. Like he understood this part mattered. She laughed softly through tears. You're very careful, she whispered. His tail tapped once. She read the message again. Slower. Letting each word settle. Letting each memory it unlocked come gently instead of all at once. Summer evenings. Storytime voices. Hands turning pages. A presence that used to sit beside her on the floor just like this. She pressed her palm over her heart. The beat was steady now. Strong. Not fragile anymore. I didn't know it was still here, she whispered. The puppy's ears flicked toward her voice. He nudged the edge of the page gently with his nose. Not pushing it closed. Not pushing it open. Just touching. Like saying yes. Stay here. This matters. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. Then carefully pulled her phone from her pocket. Opened the camera. Took a picture of the page. Not to share. Not to post. Just to keep safe. Then she set the phone aside. And sat there. Reading. Remembering. Breathing. The rain slowed outside. Dripped from the roof in soft space taps. Inside, the house felt warmer. Like it was remembering with her. She turned another page slowly. Then another. Near the end of the book, one last thing waited. Taped carefully inside the back cover. Almost invisible unless you knew to look. She leaned closer. A small photograph. Edges worn. Colors faded slightly. But still clear enough. Her chest collapsed inward for a moment. She picked it up carefully. Her fingers trembled. It was her. Small. Maybe 6 years old. Sitting cross-legged. Holding this same book. And beside her, just barely in frame, a familiar arm. A familiar hand resting gently on her shoulder. She pressed the photo to her lips. Closed her eyes. The puppy shifted closer. Rested his head fully across her ankle now. Heavy. Warm. Anchoring her to now. To here. To safe. I forgot, she whispered. Her voice cracked. But you didn't. The puppy sighed softly. Long. Content. Like a weight he'd been carrying was finally lifting. She set the photo carefully inside the front cover. Not hidden. Not lost. Just protected. Then she closed the book slowly. Rested both hands on top of it. The rain stopped completely. The silence afterward felt peaceful. Complete. She leaned back against the couch. The puppy rolled slightly onto his side. Exposed his belly, relaxed, trusting, safe. She smiled. Reaching down to rub his chest gently. You brought me back to it, she whispered. His tail brushed the rug lazily. Outside, clouds began to thin. Moonlight slowly replaced rainlight. Inside, she sat with the book beside her. The message inside her chest no longer felt like grief. Felt like connection. Like something unfinished had finally been answered. And as the puppy drifted slowly toward sleep, his breathing slow, steady, peaceful, she understood something new. Some messages don't arrive in words. Sometimes, they arrive on 4 small paws. Morning came quietly. No rain. No wind. Just pale gold sunlight stretching slowly across the bedroom wall. She woke before her alarm. Not startled. Not heavy with sleep. Just awake. Aware. The kind of awake that comes when your mind is already working before your eyes open. The puppy was curled against her side. His breathing soft. Warm against her ribs. One paw resting lightly across her wrist. Like he had claimed her sometime during the night. She didn't move right away. Just lay there. Listening. The distant hum of a delivery truck. A neighbor's gate clicking shut. The soft creak of the house settling as morning warmed it. Then the memory of the book returned. Clear. Present. Waiting. Her chest tightened but not painfully. More like anticipation. She turned her head slowly. The puppy's ear flicked. Then he opened one eye. Then the other. He lifted his head immediately. Alert. Watching her face. You too, she whispered. His tail thumped once against the mattress. Slow. Hopeful. She smiled. Okay, she said softly. Let's get up. The storybook sat on the kitchen table now. Not hidden. Not on the floor. Not forgotten. Sunlight pooled across the table's surface, warming the blue cloth cover until it almost glowed. She set her coffee beside it. Sat slowly. The puppy sat across from her. Not touching the book. Not guarding. Just watching. Like this part belonged to her. She ran her fingers along the edge of the cover. I think I need to know everything, she said quietly. The puppy blinked slowly, then lowered himself to the floor. Resting. Trusting. She opened her laptop. The screen light felt harsh compared to the soft morning light. She typed slowly. Names first. Then dates. Then places she barely remembered visiting. Search results filled the screen. Obituaries. Old neighborhood articles. Archived community newsletters. Her breath caught when she saw one photo. A small article. Years old. About a local reading program. She clicked. The page loaded slowly. Each second felt stretched. There it was. A photograph of a small community library room. Children sitting cross-legged. A familiar chair in the corner. And standing beside it, a face she hadn't seen in years. Her chest tightened hard. Oh, she whispered. The puppy lifted his head instantly, watching her, listening to her breathing. She read the article slowly. About weekly story hours. About volunteers who read to neighborhood kids. About someone who believed stories could change how children saw the world. Her throat closed. She reached for the storybook without looking. Rested her hand on it. Grounding. Of course, she whispered. Memories unlocked gently now. Not overwhelming. Not crashing. Just opening doors one by one. Summer afternoons in cool library air. Paper dust. Carpet cleaner. Soft voices reading aloud. Her small hands turning pages beside someone patient and kind. Her chest rose sharply. Then steadied. The puppy stood. Walked slowly to her chair. Pressed his shoulder against her leg. Solid. Warm. She rested her hand on his head. I think this was theirs, she whispered. His ears twitched. She clicked deeper into archives. Found another article. Then another. Community events. Book drives. Reading outreach programs. The same name appearing again and again. Quietly helping. Quietly showing up. Quietly building something that lasted. Tears slipped down her face again. But they felt like understanding now. Not loss. Understanding. They saved stories for kids, she whispered. And they saved one for me. The puppy leaned harder into her leg. She reached down. Scratched behind his ear. He sighed. Content. Like this was exactly what he'd been waiting for. She closed the laptop slowly. The kitchen felt warmer now. Full of sunlight. Full of memory. She pulled the storybook into her lap. Opened to the handwritten page again. Ran her fingers lightly beside the ink. I didn't lose you, she whispered. I just forgot where to look. The puppy climbed halfway into her lap. Careful. Gentle. Not blocking the book. Just staying close. She pressed her cheek lightly against his head. Closed her eyes. Breathing in warm fur and morning coffee and sunlight. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt layered. Past and present sitting beside each other peacefully. She flipped to the back of the book again. Looked at the photo. Studied the hand on her shoulder. The way it rested there. Protective. Steady. Then she looked at the puppy. The way he stayed pressed against her ribs. Protective. Steady. Her breath caught softly. "Did you know?" she whispered. The puppy blinked slowly. Then rested his chin on the open page. Calm. Certain. Outside, wind moved gently through trees again. Inside, something settled inside her chest. Not a question anymore. An answer. She closed the book gently. Held it against her heart. And for the first time since finding it, she smiled without tears. The puppy's tail thumped twice. Slow. Happy. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet truth formed. Some stories aren't just written. Some are carried forward. Protected. Passed down. Sometimes through memories. Sometimes through people. And sometimes through the quiet, watchful love of a small dog who somehow knows exactly where your heart needs to go next. The afternoon air carried the first hint of spring. Not warm yet, but softer. Gentler against the skin. She stood at the front door, slipping her shoes on slowly, tying the laces tighter than usual. Not because she needed to, because she was thinking. The puppy waited beside the door. Not spinning in circles like he usually did before walks. Not bouncing. Just standing. Alert. Patient. Like he was waiting for something more than fresh air. She grabbed the leash. Clipped it gently onto his collar. "You ready?" she whispered. His tail moved once. Slow. Certain. She opened the door. Cool air brushed her face. The street smelled faintly of damp pavement and distant cooking smoke. Somewhere down the block a lawnmower hummed. Normal life. Normal sounds. But today, her chest felt tight with a quiet expectation she couldn't explain. They stepped onto the sidewalk. The puppy didn't pull. Didn't zigzag. He walked straight. Focused. Ears forward. She noticed within the first few steps. "Hey," she said softly. "Where are you going?" He didn't look back. Just kept walking. Not fast. Not frantic. Intentional. They passed their usual corner. The place where he normally stopped to sniff a fire hydrant. Today, he didn't even glance at it. Her heartbeat picked up slightly. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'm following." They walked 3 blocks. 4. The neighborhood changed slowly. Less houses. More trees. The sidewalk narrowed. Birdsong replaced traffic noise. The puppy slowed as they approached a small public green space she hadn't visited in years. Not since. She stopped walking. Her breath caught. "Oh," she whispered. The park sign stood slightly tilted, paint faded from years of sun. The puppy turned. Looked at her. Then gently tugged forward. Not pulling hard. Just asking. Her throat tightened. "I haven't been here in a long time," she said softly. The puppy waited. Patient. She stepped forward. The grass smelled fresh. Wet from morning dew. Children's laughter drifted faintly from the far playground, but this part of the park stayed quiet. Older trees. Worn walking paths. Benches softened by years of weather. They walked toward the center. Toward a large oak tree. Her chest squeezed. Her steps slowed. "No way," she whispered. The puppy stopped directly at the base of the tree. Saturday. Looked up at her. Tail resting calmly against the grass. Waiting. Her vision blurred slightly. Memories surfaced. Not sharp, not painful. Just present. A blanket spread on grass. Story pages turning. A voice reading aloud. Warm summer wind moving through leaves above them. Her knees weakened slightly. She sat on the grass. The puppy climbed into her lap immediately. Pressed his chest against her. Grounded her. Held her steady. Her hand shook as she reached into her jacket pocket. pulled out the photograph she had brought without fully realizing why. She looked at it, then looked around. The angle of the tree branches, the slope of the grass, the worn dirt patch near the roots. Her breath broke. "This is it," she whispered. The puppy licked her chin once. Soft, reassuring, not playful, present. She leaned back against the tree trunk. The bark scratched gently through her jacket. Solid, real, safe. Her chest rose sharply, then collapsed, then rose again. And suddenly, the tears came. Not quiet this time, not controlled, not hidden, just release. She pressed her face into the puppy's neck fur, cried into the warmth of him, into the now, into the safety. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The puppy stayed perfectly still, letting her hold him, letting her break, letting her rebuild. Eventually her breathing slowed. She pulled back, wiped her face with her sleeve, looked up through the tree branches. Sunlight filtered through new spring leaves. Gold, green, alive. "I didn't come back," she whispered. The puppy shifted, rested his paw lightly against her chest, right over her heart. "I couldn't," she said softly. "It hurt too much." The wind moved gently through the branches above. Leaves whispered together. She closed her eyes, let the sound wash through her. Then she whispered, "I'm here now." The puppy's tail brushed her leg. Slow, steady. She stayed there a long time, not thinking, not searching, just being. Eventually she stood, brushed grass from her jeans, clipped the leash back into her hand, but didn't pull him to leave right away. She looked at the tree once more, touched the bark, pressed her palm flat against it. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she looked down at the puppy. He looked back up. Ice calm, work finished, but still watching, still staying, still hers. They walked home slower. The sun sat lower now, the air warmer. Her chest felt open, like something locked for years had finally been given permission to breathe. As they turned onto their street, the puppy glanced up at her once. She smiled. "I know," she whispered. And for the first time in a very long time, home didn't feel like a place she was hiding from the past. It felt like a place she could carry it with her, peacefully, safely, lovingly. The days after the park visit felt quieter. Not empty, not heavy, just settled. Morning sunlight returned to its normal place across the kitchen table. The house smelled like fresh coffee and clean laundry. The ticking clock sounded familiar again instead of loud. She stood barefoot at the sink watching steam rise from her mug. Behind her, the puppy padded slowly across the floor. Not restless, not alert, just relaxed. His nails made soft, unhurried taps against the wood. She turned slightly. He walked past the storybook on the coffee table without stopping, without guarding, without hesitation. Her chest warmed. "Hey," she whispered. He glanced back at her, tail wagging in an easy, loose rhythm. Not duty, not protection, just happiness. She exhaled slowly. That small change meant everything. Later that afternoon, she carried the storybook to the bedroom. Not like something fragile, not like something dangerous, just like something important. The puppy followed, curious, but calm. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the drawer of her nightstand. Inside were simple things. A notebook, a pen, a small stack of old photographs. She placed the storybook inside carefully. Not hidden, not buried, just safe. She closed the drawer halfway, paused, then left it slightly open. The puppy jumped onto the bed beside her, circled once, then settled. His body pressed warmly against her thigh. She scratched behind his ear. "You don't need to guard it anymore," she said softly. He blinked slowly, relaxed completely. She smiled. The next week passed gently. Routine returned, but it felt different now, stronger. She started walking him earlier in the mornings. Cool air, quiet streets, sunrise stretching pink across rooftops. The puppy trotted beside her instead of leading, sometimes bumping her leg lightly, checking in, staying connected. One morning they passed a small neighborhood book donation box. Paint chipped, door slightly crooked. She slowed, stopped. The puppy stopped too, sat beside her. She stared at the box for a long moment, then whispered, "Maybe it's time." That afternoon, she opened the nightstand drawer again, pulled out the storybook, sat cross-legged on the bedroom floor. The puppy settled across from her, watching, present. She opened to the handwritten message. Read it once, then again, letting the words feel like memory instead of loss. Then she reached for her notebook and began writing. Not copying, not repeating, just responding. A letter back. Words she wished she could have said years ago. "Thank you. I remember now. I'm okay." Her handwriting shook at first, then steadied. The puppy rested his chin on her knee as she wrote. Warm, steady, grounding. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully, placed it inside the front cover of the storybook, not hiding it, just adding her voice to it. Then she closed the book, held it against her chest, and breathed. Long, slow, peaceful. That evening she walked to the donation box. The puppy trotted beside her, tail swaying. Streetlights hummed softly above them as dusk settled. Crickets started their evening rhythm. She opened the small wooden door, paused, looked down at the book one last time. Her throat tightened, but it didn't hurt. Felt like saying goodbye and thank you at the same time. "You helped me find it," she whispered to the puppy. He nudged her hand gently. She placed the storybook inside, closed the door, stepped back. The puppy leaned lightly into her leg. They stood there for a moment, watching the small box like it was something sacred. Then she whispered, "Let it help someone else now." The puppy's tail brushed her calf, soft, agreeing. At home that night, the house felt lighter than it ever had. Not empty, never empty, just peaceful. She sat on the couch. The puppy climbed halfway into her lap, too big now to fit completely, but he tried anyway. She laughed quietly, wrapped her arms around him, rested her chin on his head. "You saved me a long time ago," she whispered, "and I didn't even know it yet." He sighed. Heavy. Content. Outside, wind moved gently through trees. Inside, her chest felt open, unblocked, steady. Healing didn't feel like forgetting, felt like remembering without breaking. And as the puppy drifted toward sleep, breathing slow, body warm, heart steady against hers, she understood something simple. Healing isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. Sometimes, it's just waking up one morning and realizing your heart doesn't hurt the same way anymore. Spring arrived slowly, not all at once, not dramatic, just steady. The trees outside her window filled with soft green leaves. The morning air smelled like new grass and warm sunlight. Birds returned to the power lines, singing before sunrise like they were announcing something gentle and important. The house felt alive in a quiet way. Not crowded, not noisy, just full. She stood in the kitchen early one Saturday morning, slicing strawberries into a bowl. The knife tapped softly against the cutting board. Coffee brewed behind her, filling the room with a deep, familiar warmth. The puppy, not really a puppy anymore, lay stretched across the living room rug. Longer legs now, broader chest, but the same soft eyes. He watched her the way he always had, present, connected. She glanced at him and smiled. "You're getting big," she said. His tail thumped twice. Lazy, happy. Life had settled into something new, something steady. She volunteered twice a week now at the small community reading center across town. Not as a replacement for the past, not as an obligation, just because it felt right, because stories had carried her, and now she carried them forward. Some afternoons, children sat cross-legged around her chair while she read aloud. She learned how to slow her voice, how to let moments breathe, how to watch their faces soften when stories wrapped around them like blankets. Sometimes when she finished reading, she would feel something warm in her chest. Not sadness. Not longing. Just connection. The kind that stretched across time without breaking. One warm afternoon, she returned home earlier than usual. The sky was wide and blue. The air carried the smell of someone grilling somewhere down the street. Laughter drifted from a neighbor's yard. She opened the front door. The dog lifted his head instantly, tail sweeping across the rug. She unclipped her shoes and stepped inside. "Hey," she said softly. He stood, walked over, pressed his head gently into her stomach, the same way he had since the beginning. Grounding. Steady. She wrapped her arms loosely around his neck, closed her eyes, just for a second, then she exhaled, and something inside her settled even deeper. Later that evening, she sat on the front steps as sunset turned the sky orange and gold. The dog lay beside her, chin resting across her foot. Warm. Familiar. Cars passed slowly on the street. A child laughed somewhere. Wind moved softly through new leaves. She held her notebook in her hands, the same one she had written in months ago. She flipped through the pages slowly. Letters she had written. Memories she had captured. Thoughts she had finally let exist outside her chest. She stopped at a blank page, tapped her pen lightly against it, then began writing. Not about loss. Not about grief. About now. About the quiet miracle of waking up and feeling okay. About a small dog who had once guarded a book like it held the world. About how sometimes love waits patiently until you're ready to receive it again. The dog shifted slightly beside her, his breathing slow. Content. She reached down without looking, rested her hand on his back, felt the steady rise and fall beneath her palm. "You found me," she whispered. His tail moved once. Slow. Certain. The sun dipped lower. Streetlights flickered on one by one. The sky turned lavender, then deep blue. She closed the notebook, set it beside her, and just sat there, listening to the world settle into night. The dog yawned, then slowly rolled onto his side, exposed his belly, completely relaxed. She laughed softly, rubbed his chest. "You trust me now," she whispered. His back leg kicked once. Happy. Comfortable. Home. Months later, on a quiet autumn afternoon, she walked past the same neighborhood book donation box again. Paint still chipped. Door still slightly crooked. She paused. Just for a moment. Looked inside. New books now. Different stories. Different lives waiting to be touched. She smiled. Not sad. Not nostalgic. Just grateful. The dog sat beside her. Older now. Calmer. Still watching her like she was the center of his world. She closed the box gently and whispered, "Thank you." Not to the box. Not to the past. To everything that had carried her here. That night, she sat in the living room with the windows open. Cool autumn air drifting through. The dog lay with his head in her lap. She stroked his ears slowly, rhythmically. Outside, leaves moved across the street in soft scraping sounds. Inside, the clock ticked gently, and for the first time in years, silence felt like peace. Not absence. Peace. She leaned her head back against the couch, closed her eyes, and let herself simply exist inside the life she had rebuilt. The life she had remembered how to live. Somewhere deep inside her heart, the message stayed. Not in words. Not on paper. In feeling. In presence. In quiet strength. And beside her, the dog shifted slightly in his sleep, pressed closer to her leg, like he always would, like he always had, guarding not a book anymore, not a memory, just her. And she understood something beautiful in that quiet moment. Some endings don't feel like endings. Some endings feel like doors opening into softer light, into steady warmth, into lives where love doesn't disappear, just changes shape. And as night settled fully around the house, as the dog slept peacefully beside her, as her heart beat slow, strong, and whole, she smiled, because the story hadn't really ended. It had simply become something she could finally carry forward, peacefully, lovingly, forever.